Hadith, a new twist on an old parable. This one's from Sahih al-Bukhari, number 5021. The Prophet said, "Your life in comparison to the lifetime of the past nations is like the period between the time of Asr prayer and sunset." The Asr prayer is the third prayer of the day. "Your example, and the example of the Jews and Christians, is that of a person who employed laborers and said to them, 'Who will work for me until the middle of the day for one Qirat?'" It's money. The Jews did. He then said, "Who will work for me from the middle of the day until the Asr prayer for one Qirat each?" And the Christians worked accordingly. Then you, the Muslims, are working from the Asr prayer, remember that's the third prayer, until the Maghrib prayer, that's the fourth prayer, for two Qirats each. Then they, the Jews and Christians, said, "We did more labor, but we took less wages." But Allah said, "Have I wronged you in your rights?" And they replied, "No." Then he said, "This is my blessing, which I give to whom I wish." Now, with all those cultural references, it's not the clearest story in the world to Western ears. But for a Western Christian hearing that, it actually is quite familiar, because this is basically the parable of the workers in the vineyard. It's a Matthew original. Now, where did this come from? Did Muhammad get this from Matthew? I don't know. Information on an individual hadith is much harder to come by than anything that appears in the Quran. And sometimes ideas just kind of overlap over time, but wow, is that familiar. For those who don't know the parable, here it is. This is from Matthew 20. "For the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire laborers for his vineyard. After agreeing with the laborers for the usual daily wage, he sent them into his vineyard. When he went out about 9 o'clock, he saw others standing idle in the marketplace, and he said to them, 'You also go into my vineyard, and I will pay you whatever is right.' So they went. When he went out again about noon and about 3 o'clock, he did the same thing. And at about 5 o'clock, he went out and found others standing around, and he said to them, 'Why are you standing here idle all day?' And they said to him, 'Because no one has hired us.' So he said, 'You can also go into the vineyard.' And when evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to his manager, 'Call the laborers and give them their pay, beginning with the last and then going to the first.' When those hired about 5 o'clock came, each of them received the usual daily wage. Now when the first came, they thought they would receive more, but each of them also received the usual daily wage. And when they received it, they grumbled against the landowner, saying, 'These last workers worked only 1 hour, and you have made them equal to us, who have borne the burden of the day and the scorching heat.' But he replied to one of them, 'Friend, I am only doing you no wrong. Did you not agree with me for the usual daily wage? Take what belongs to you and go. I choose to give to this last the same as I give to you. Am I not allowed to do what I choose with what belongs to me? Or are you envious because I am generous? So the last will be first, and the first will be last.'" So in this parable, Jesus is making a point about the kingdom of heaven, about future ministries and what it means to come to Jesus. It's an end result proposition, like the prodigal son. What is important is not when the workers came to the vineyard. The important point is that they came to the vineyard. Now, this parable is a bit more layered than that. This is not all it means, but for our purposes, we'll just go with this specific interpretation. So think of this in terms of individuals in heaven, when Jesus is speaking of this. The deathbed conversion, that counts exactly the same as a lifetime of faith. And any newcomers are welcome at any time. Again, the important thing is that they found God, not how long it took them to find God. And in his version, Muhammad is giving a broader perspective on communities rather than on individuals, basically saying that the big three, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, basically covered a specific period in time. The time being between, if I remember, it was the Asr prayer and the evening or sunset. That's right. There's nothing super wild in there. But then comes the twist. In the end, the Muslims are actually getting paid more. Now, I think this is Muhammad telling his people, hey, you guys are lucky to live in the time of the Quran, in a time which he considered to be God's perfected religion. So from his perspective, it's a richer time. Of course, I would counter that he's missing at least one very important thing, but that's another topic. But there is this same theme that just because the later people seemingly are getting a better deal, that does not mean that the earlier people were cheated. One thing does not have anything to do with the other, aside from the ever-present and unavoidable human concept of fairness. So both versions stress that God is actually not being unfair in either version. Everyone who works in the vineyard should be, theoretically, happy with their wages because it's what they agreed to. And really, in the larger picture, if you're working in God's vineyard, you should probably be happy just to be there. Thank you, and I'll talk to you next time. Inshallah.